In the early 1970s, a young woman met a wealthy real estate heir while living in one of the family's Manhattan buildings. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage, but behind closed doors, their relationship was marred by control, violence, and emotional abuse. In early 1982, after attending a party, she vanished without a trace. Her husband claimed she took a train to Manhattan, but inconsistencies in his story and troubling evidence, blood in their home, discarded belongings, and a suspicious phone call cast doubt. Years later, renewed investigations linked the husband to multiple deaths, including a close friend and a neighbor, and culminated in a chilling confession caught on a hot mic. Killed them all, of course. Though he was convicted of one murder and charged with his wife's, he died before facing trial. Her body was never found, and her disappearance remains a mystery. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalyn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Kathleen's story. Kathleen McCormick was born on June 15, 1952 in New York City. She was the youngest of 5 children born to James and Ann McCormick. Kathleen grew up alongside her siblings Jim, Virginia, Mary, and Carol in Long Island, attending New Hyde Park Memorial High School and working numerous part-time jobs. As a child, Kathleen was described as spunky. She graduated from Western Connecticut State University in 1978. She continued her education at Albert Einstein College of Medicine with the goal of becoming a pediatrician. Kathleen was set to graduate in the spring of 1982. In the early 1970s, Kathleen moved into a high-rise apartment building in Manhattan where she met Robert Durst, the heir to a major Manhattan real estate empire. At the time, she was living in one of the Durst family's buildings. The two started dating in 1972. After just 2 dates, Robert convinced Kathleen to move to Vermont with him to help him run a health food store. However, the couple didn't stay in Vermont long and soon moved back to New York. Kathleen and Robert quickly married in 1973 when she was 21 and he was 27. At first, their marriage seemed like a dream, but it soon became a nightmare. In 1976, Kathleen found out she was pregnant. She wanted to have a baby, but Robert did not, and he forced her to get an abortion in March. On the way to the abortion, Robert threw water on Kathleen's head. The abortion left Kathleen feeling hopeless, helpless, and depressed. A few months later, in late May, Kathleen learned Robert was having an affair. She wrote in her diary, "Much trust had left our marriage by that time, but we still maintained a facade of a loving couple." It was becoming evident that Kathleen and Robert were experiencing marital problems. One of their neighbors in the apartment on Riverside Drive told investigators that on one previous occasion, Kathleen had climbed from her balcony to the neighbor's balcony and knocked on the window to be let in. Kathleen was scared and hysterical. She told the neighbor that Robert had beaten her, that he had a gun, and she was frightened that he would shoot her. This was one of many incidents in which Kathleen came to their apartment seeking protection from Robert. Kathleen's own family even witnessed signs of abuse. Her brother Jim stated he walked over to her, grabbed her by the top of her hair, and yanked her, and she went with that pull. This was James' first sign of domestic abuse in the marriage. Kathleen's sister Virginia described Robert as a sick, controlling person. Just before Christmas in 1981, Kathleen brought a bag of items to her sister Mary's home and told her to store in a safe place. Kathleen told Mary, "If anything happens to me, give it to police." Mary begged Kathleen to leave Robert. Kathleen promised her sister she would, but she couldn't leave yet. Little did Mary know at the time, this would be one of the last times she would see her sister, and she would need to use the bag of items to learn what happened to Kathleen. The last time the McCormick family saw Kathleen alive was during a Christmas gathering. Robert wanted to go home at the end of the evening, but Kathleen wanted to stay. In mid-January 1982, Kathleen was treated in an emergency room in New York City after a beating at the hands of her husband. She declined to press charges. Later that month, on January 31, 1982, Kathleen attended a party hosted by her friend Gilbert in Newtown. Kathleen left the party with Robert and was never seen again. Kathleen was first reported missing to the New York Police Department by her husband on February 5, 1982, 5 days after she went missing. Robert claimed that he had driven Kathleen from their South Salem home to a nearby train station where she boarded the 9:15 p.m. train bound for Manhattan so she could return to their Riverside Drive apartment. Robert called her later from a payphone and confirmed she had arrived at the apartment. Based on Robert's information, investigators focused their investigation in Manhattan. The New York Police Department, with the assistance of the New York State Police, interviewed Kathleen's friends and family. These interviews revealed inconsistencies between Robert's original statements about his wife's disappearance and the statements of the individuals that were involved. First, Robert told police that after driving Kathleen to the train, he stopped at the home of his South Salem neighbors for drinks before he returned to his home next door. His neighbors denied that Robert visited them that evening. Additionally, a cleaning woman who worked in the Durst's South Salem home showed police what she described as a small amount of blood on the dishwasher. She also noticed a wood panel askew in the dining room, as well as grimy fingerprints in that area. She also told police that Robert instructed her to dispose of many of Kathleen's belongings soon after her disappearance. Police searched the home and found a secret compartment behind the wood panel, but no evidence was recovered inside the compartment, nor was any new evidence discovered in other parts of the home. In the days following Kathleen's disappearance, a worker at another one of the Durst's apartments encountered a clogged trash compactor at the building. Inside, she found a number of personal items, including medical books belonging to Kathleen. Despite the evidence that seemingly contradicted Robert's versions of events, the focus of the investigation remained in New York City. This was due to workers at Riverside Drive building claiming to have seen her at the building the night she disappeared. Additionally, a phone call was placed to Kathleen's medical school the day after she was last seen, where she allegedly notified them of her intended absence. After Kathleen disappeared, her family discovered her journal where Kathleen detailed years of abuse, including being slapped and punched. Some of the journal entries prior to her disappearance include, "He punched me and I fell to the ground. He told me not to tell my friends or family where I went to school. A few times I slipped and he became angry with me. We attended a meeting at an agency in White Plains. He told me how I should act and what I ought to say. I disagreed and he threw a gallon of water on my head. I felt humiliated and cried." From the beginning, Kathleen's family knew what happened to her. Kathleen's brother Jim has said he has no doubt he knows who did it, stating, "Robert Durst killed my sister in 1982. Kathleen's mother Anne lived in fear of Robert. She barricaded her house every day to protect herself from a surprise visit from Robert. She'd put step stools next to the doors and keep all her windows locked. Others agree that they know Robert killed Kathleen. Jill Biden's former husband, Bill Stevenson, shared that he had a secret affair with Kathleen days before her disappearance. Bill first met Kathleen in the 1960s when they were children spending summers near one another. Their friendship continued even as they went on to marry different partners. In the summer of 1974, Bill and his then-wife Jill hosted Robert and Kathleen at their Delaware home for a 3-day weekend. A few years later, Bill received a surprise phone call from Kathleen. She called him extremely upset, saying she was having a problem with Robert and was scared to death. Between December 1981 and January 1982, Bill, who is now divorced from Jill, visited Kathleen at least 5 times in New York City to try and help her escape her troubled marriage. During one of those visits, when he stayed at Kathleen's apartment, their relationship took an unexpected turn, and the two were intimate with each other. The next morning, at 7:30 a.m., there was a pounding on the door. It was Robert. Robert began screaming and slapped Kathleen in the face with a wad of cash. Robert yelled, "Kathleen, this isn't going to happen." She yelled back, "I'm moving to Delaware. I'm done." One of Bill's friends, George Kern, was also in the apartment at the time and remembers the incident vividly. Robert was very angry with Kathleen, and there was a lot of yelling and screaming. George described Robert as being out of his mind, angry, and having no control over himself. Kathleen vanished just 10 days after this incident. Bill believes his intimate relationship with Kathleen drove Robert to kill her, but he doesn't regret it. He says, "I think it would have driven him crazy, and I don't feel guilty about that. He was abusing her, and she wanted out. I do not regret that. I feel if something was wonderful at the end of her life, I hope it was this. I just hope she had the same thoughts at the end there." In 1999, authorities received a tip from a person who had been arrested on an unrelated case and who claimed to know where Kathleen's body was. While the tip did not lead to any credible evidence, it did cause investigators to begin another investigation into Kathleen's disappearance. Many witnesses were re-interviewed, and it was determined that the information gathered in 1982, which led police to focus the investigation in Manhattan, was not credible or reliable. Specifically, the staff that believed they saw Kathleen on the night she disappeared had been mistaken and thought he saw someone wearing Kathleen's coat, but wasn't certain it was Kathleen. Additionally, in the call to the medical school, there was no evidence that the person who identified herself as Kathleen was in fact Kathleen and not someone pretending to be her. Subsequent evidence was developed that the call was not in fact placed by Kathleen. The existence of a new investigation was reported to the media in October 2000, and shortly after, Robert fled to Texas where he disguised himself as a mute woman using the name of an old classmate. As part of the investigation, authorities wanted to interview Susan Berman, a longtime friend of Robert's. However, before investigators could speak with her, she was murdered in her Los Angeles home at the end of December 2000. It was learned that prior to her murder, Robert had sent Susan 2 checks with the value of $25,000 each. Then, on September 28, 2001, Morris Black, Robert's neighbor, was murdered and his dismembered torso was found in garbage bags floating in Galveston Bay. Evidence led investigators to Robert, who was arrested and charged with Morris's murder. Robert posted bail on October 6, 2001, and fled. He was arrested again on November 30, 2001, after being caught shoplifting a sandwich and newspaper inside a Pennsylvania supermarket. Police searched his rental car, which he had rented in Morris's name. Officers recovered $37,000, 2 loaded handguns, and some handwritten notes, one of which contained the work address of a friend of Kathleen who was vocal about her belief that Robert killed Kathleen. Robert was transferred to Texas for trial. During the trial, Robert testified that he killed Morris in an act of self-defense. On November 11, 2003, Robert was acquitted of Morris's murder due to lack of forensic evidence. Robert pled guilty to bail jumping and tampering evidence and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He was not charged in the murder of Susan or Kathleen. However, prosecutors believed Robert killed Susan because she was going to implicate him in Kathleen's death. In 2015, an HBO documentary premiered which presented new evidence. Robert participated in 3 days of recorded interviews during which he made many admissions. These admissions included that he had a number of physical altercations with Kathleen, including on the night she disappeared, that he lied to police about calling and speaking to her at the Riverside apartment, and that he did not actually have drinks with his neighbors the night she disappeared. But perhaps his most damning admission was the one he was caught saying on a hot mic while he was in the bathroom. "What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course." He also muttered, "There it is. You're caught." The bathroom audio was turned over to police, who subsequently obtained an arrest warrant for the murder of Susan Berman. Robert was convicted in 2021 for murdering Susan and sentenced to life in prison without parole. He was charged with Kathleen's murder shortly after his sentencing, but died in 2022 before his trial could begin. Prosecutors had long suspected Robert killed his wife, although her body has never been found. Kathleen was declared dead on April 7, 2017. Robert quietly divorced his wife 8 years after she went missing, claiming spousal abandonment. He went on to remarry, marrying Deborah Chardatan in 2000. The marriage was described as a marriage of convenience and was ongoing at the time of Robert's death in 2022. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Kathleen's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media. And join me next week as I dive into another case.